Hey everybody, thanks for attending April's webinar. This is the new norm. Probably 4 weeks ago, Issuetrak sent everybody home. So we're business as normal with the new norm. We're working from home. We're going to change things up a little bit today for this one. I apologize up front for strange noises. I got a couple of dogs, grandkids. We're in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. We got the largest master air base, so we got jets and trash collection. So any strange noises, we apologize up front. So that said, let's go through a little bit of housekeeping. So we've been doing these the second Thursday of each month. We started in December. We're getting great feedback during the webinars and after the facts from our customers. As the returning attendees will recall, the first hour is substantive in terms of we'll focus on one topic. Maybe it's different users. Today, we're going to spend that hour. We're going to be talking about a usage case. Let's see. So it's 2 hours. It's a long block of time. So if you have to drop off, attend something else, come back in. The sessions are recorded, so we have that for us. Paul's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of the speaking and presenting. I'll be monitoring the chat log and the questions. So I'll either be responding to those directly or interrupting Paul and having him address those questions as they come up. So today we're doing the first hour is that deep dive, or excuse me, the first hour is focusing on one topic. We're doing a usage case, the IT help desk scenario. So we'll be walking through the product and how it supports that usage. The second hour starts off with a deep dive. So we spend 30 minutes focusing on one topic, and Task Manager is such a differentiator on Issuetrak. It's one of the more technically complex aspects of the product. Lots of customers, we get these questions all the time. So we're going to be focusing on that one. It'll be a great resource from the webinar recording perspective to go back and do that. And you'll recall 2:30 to 2:45, we introduced the new features, or we talk about a release of Issuetrak that's made it out in the new features. We're going to change it up a little bit. We have a new feature to present to you all. We'll be introducing our new CEO, Dan Flowers. He'll jump on, say hello, and he'll be participating for that last half hour while we do Q&A. So here's yours truly. I've been at Issuetrak since 2012. Got a couple of degrees. I've done technical sales my whole life, so I build on relationships. It's not a transaction. So if I'm not engaging you, shame on me, but feel free to call or email. Love to work with you guys. So Mike is usually on the webinars. He does the bulk of the presenting. He had a family item he had to take care of, so he dropped out, but I think most of you all have engaged Mike before. So here's Paul, also one of the professional services engineers. He's done it all at Issuetrak. He started out on the technical support side, knows the backside of the product. Then he transitioned over to professional services and doing those onboarding experiences, and then just the tweaks from an ongoing basis with our customers.
It's how I make my living.
Let's see. Lastly, here's Dan Flowers. Dan started with Issuetrak about a month before I did. He's done it all on the technical side of Issuetrak. So he's done the tech support. He's done the cloud services. He's led our development effort, and so is a natural progression for him to take the the helm of Issuetrak. He's also the president of a local HDI chapter, and so he'll be joining us later. So that said, at some point I'll be muting off, but I'll be on the call monitoring the chats and questions, and let's have some fun.
All right, Tony, thank you. Before we go into our long topic, I wanted to take a second and remind everybody about where the recordings end up. We're recording today's session, as Tony said, and Andrew kind of cuts it up into separate downloads. They're out at issuetrak.com. And Tony, if you could give me a little boost in remembering exactly where when I get there.
Oh, sure.
I believe we go to resources.
Resources. And on-demand webinars. We got a lot of questions about that last time, so I wanted to make sure that we covered that on the front end this time, so you guys don't have to wonder. Anything you've missed, any of these webinars that you'd want to listen to, you can go back here and pick it right up. And you see it's split out, so you don't have to get the full 2-hour webinar. You can get the parts and pieces of it and listen to it in a shorter, a bit of it at a time. All right, with that being said, I'm going to kind of dig into our first sort of topic today. We wanted to look at a usage today. Now, in the past, we've done sort of administrator training, agent training, that type of thing. Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Mike and I had planned on looking at the IT help desk usage. That's right, a usage of Issuetrak, and kind of what that means and some of the ups and downs of IT help desk, and why our customers that do this already like Issuetrak for it, and some other things in there. So here goes. The first question I wanted to, first thing I wanted to get into was why? You know, what is an IT help desk? Why is that different from what I'm doing now? How is that different from what I'm doing? And the answer is that it's not really that different from what any of you guys do. And some of you guys probably are also doing IT help desk stuff with Issuetrak. IT help desk, it simply means that we're answering questions and requests and fixing problems with IT infrastructure or IT stuff, assets. Anything information technology related. And that could be, you know, things like requests to increase permissions or decrease permissions, password resets, browser issues, anything wrong with the computer, right? That turns into an IT help desk issue. And I wanted to make sure we pointed out, you know, we have a lot of customers, some of our oldest Issuetrak customers have been doing external help desk. You know, they provide the service desk for other companies' IT help desk needs. So some of the time this is internal folks, but some of the time this is external people as well, your customers. You're supporting them in their IT infrastructure. And the thing I really wanted to point out, especially about our internal folks, is, you know, everybody needs IT resources to do their job. Now, I'll tell you, I've been with Issuetrak a long time, but before, as Tony pointed out, before I was at Issuetrak, you guys saw the slide, I was an auto worker, right? I worked on the assembly line. Well, as a guy on the assembly line, I didn't need a computer to do my job. However, I did have a domain login. I did have a Ford email address, right? I had company resources that I needed access to so I could get announcements from my boss and emails and things like that. So I did put in help desk tickets, right? Because what happens when you forget your domain login, right? When you forget what that is? Well, you've got to do a help desk ticket so you can get that reset. So the need for these resources is pervasive. It's throughout your organization. It's everyone has this need when they're working. So that's what we're tracking. We're tracking everything related to these IT assets and these IT resources in Issuetrak with this, in the IT help desk area, whether you're using Issuetrak or not. So why is this so different
from other usages of Issuetrak? Well, that pervasive nature, right? If we're just tracking complaints, or if we're doing scheduling, or if we're doing change requests, we're not really touching as many parts of a company or of a customer as we do with IT help desk. Because everybody needs those resources and everybody has problems with those resources at one time or another. We tend to touch full companies and a lot more people with an IT help desk instance than we do when we're doing other types of issue tracking. So, we wanted to talk about who was involved. Well, and that's my point, right? Sometimes these are external customers, right? It's such a big deal that some companies outsource this because they don't have the infrastructure or the people to handle a normal IT help desk. You know, they're too big for whatever reason. Think about Ford. Ford outsources most of theirs. But most of the time, we're going to think about these as internal folks also. The other thing I want to remind everybody is that a lot of times in IT help desk, we're going to have that asset, the thing that has value. And that's where we get to this idea of who is involved. Management wants to get involved because IT investments and return on investment represents a really large part of most companies' operating revenue. So the idea that, hey, it's just a couple of computers, well, that couple of computers costs you a lot of money, probably one of your biggest outlays of cash, next to personnel, right? I would hope anyway. So we also want to talk about how do issues get into Issuetrak, and that's what we're kind of getting at with that last bullet point. How are issues reported? Well, if you talk to somebody on the help desk, right? And Mike and I do. We do this. We talk to them all the time. Your end users, right? What are you going to do, right? They don't know how to do anything. The person you're supporting may not have any computer aptitude or know anything about the problem they're having. And in talking to some of these larger, especially larger help desks, their main concern is getting end users to select the right issue type. Their end users can't even select the right issue type when something is wrong. They can't even really classify what's wrong properly. So we want to think about that. And also, what's the biggest barrier to any computer system, to anything, is the login, being able to log in, right? So we want to think about this. A lot of times when you think about the normal sort of help desk ticketing system, hey, let me go fill out a ticket, right? You're going to log into a system. You got to remember your password. You got to get in there, and that's fine. That allows you to request exact information from a customer, from somebody, and they're going to have to log in, so you'll be able to provision their account, and they won't see more than they're supposed to. But what about not having them log in? What about doing issues via email? I think this is kind of underused for a lot of my IT help desk guys out there. Issues via email. Don't even force the user to do anything. Just let them send you an email, and then you classify it. You take the work on yourself and give that higher that level of service to your customers. And the other thing that's kind of come on recently with Issuetrak that I play a big role in is the web form too. Sometimes we want that idea of a user experience. We want to have control over that experience, so the user has to tell us some things, but we don't want them to have to log in, right? And then we talk about web forms. We do have a couple of customers that are doing IT support with web forms too, where the user just visits a page and they ask certain questions, and then the logic of the form guides them to an answer, or creates a ticket in Issuetrak so that the IT team can guide them to an answer. So that's the general stuff about it. Now, we wanted to get in and look at some, for the rest of our hour here, I wanted to get in and look at some of the tools, some of the features. And I wanted to really, the rest of today's discussion, I want to kind of stick to features in Issuetrak rather than exactly how you could set that up, whatever, because I want you to know what these features are, right? That's what the real benefit to you guys, who some of you are doing IT help desk and some of you aren't. But there's a lot of features that come into play when you're thinking about doing IT help desk. So let's get into that and look. So the first thing we want to think about, we got an IT team, IT help desk team. So we want to think about that issue happens, right? And whether it comes in via email or comes in via a web form or by logging in, it has to get routed to the right staff. Because when we think about this pervasive nature, all of these different types of assets and different types of things that could be a problem, we need to think about routing those out to the right folks on the team, right? For example, a password reset issue, right? That can go to our people that own the system you need your password reset in, right? Not everybody needs to be involved every time. Or we think about something where somebody is requesting a higher level of access, right? An access request. That's still IT help desk, right? But it might need to touch some more approvals. Maybe that needs to go to management first before the owner of that system promotes that user. So we use these features in Issuetrak to kind of do that routing and queuing so that we can have a little more control over where the issue goes, hopefully to the right people, right? And we think about things like auto assignment rules in Issuetrak, the business rules, things like quick picks that predefine workflows and things that predefine workflows and other things on the ticket that pre-fill the fields for you. And we also think about incoming email. Incoming email has quite a few features and settings that can pre-fill fields on an issue for you also, not without even using quick picks. So it's very helpful. I think incoming email, I think, is really underutilized by my help desk guys. I don't think they really pay that enough attention. And then, of course, we've got agent assignment. We have to think about agent assignment. When we're thinking about routing issues, who are we going to give those issues to, right? To own an issue, to be an agent, and we've talked about this in previous webinars, right? You guys can go back and listen to the other webinars. But remember, to be assigned an issue, you've got to be an agent, right? If you're just an actor, if you're just going to take one part of that issue, then we can assign you a task, and you don't need to be an agent. Right? Keep that in mind as we get through there. So with that in mind, now that we've talked about agents, let's talk about assignment and my issues. So let's say I'm the manager of the help desk and I give Mr. Tony, I'm going to point at him because he's showing his screen. And let's say I give him an issue. How does he know that? How does he know that he gets an issue, right? Well, number one, he gets an email, but we're on the IT help desk, right? We get 100 emails a day. I don't have time to look at all of those, right? So his best bet is
to just write a rule to send them off to Never Never Land.
Send them off to trash, like I do with Tony's emails to me, right? He's got a Slack. He knows he's got a Slack. He can't email me anything, right? And you guys are already familiar. Probably most of you that can hear my voice are already familiar with my issues in the dashboard. We just want to make sure we kind of pay a little lip service there, right? Those are the features that actually make that work. And those of you that have worked with me, you heard me say this before, right? The my issues, very underutilized by your agents, right? That's how you know, that's how you see just the stuff you are involved in. And for example, you guys just watched me log into the CS training site. Now my default page was the dashboard, but I flipped over to my issues here and you can see nothing assigned to me. I got nothing to do, right? That's because I'm at the management level here. I probably need to grab some of these unassigned issues and get them out to the different folks. The other thing when we talk about routing issues and making sure assignees know what's out there, it's just like making sure it's the same way that management knows what's out there and what's happening in their system. It's via the dashboard. It's that beautiful management level overview of the issues that are going on in the site. And it's very, it's kind of, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that we like classes in Issuetrak. When we get into help desk, the help desk guys, a lot of times they're willing to share their Issuetrak site. They'll go in and manage the site, but hey, let's add customer support here. Let's add complaint management and let's add some other things. Well, that's when classes really come in and become helpful. Right? So if we look at just the help desk issues, I've got 143 open issues in the site. And if I look, they're all types of issues, many different types, new hire, onboarding, all sorts of stuff like that, right? Assigned out throughout the site to agents throughout the site. Now, if I come back here, and if I scroll down here, if I come back and filter that down by class, it really makes the dashboard more useful. So I can see, oh, well, help desk has got 23 out of that, right? They're doing pretty darn good, right? So that's one of those features that really makes the IT help desk usage sing, is adding class when you've got multiple usages in the site. Like I said, it's very common in IT help desk. Now, let me get that back out of the way. And we'll come back to updating issues, right? When we update issues, the tendency for my IT teams that we work with, that Mike and I work with, the tendency is to build in every single field that you could possibly need and kind of overcomplicate the overhead of the system, right? And then they have problems with user acceptance because there's too many darn fields on an issue, too many fields to get it done, right? Not only do they forget their password, but they can't fill out the issue because it's got 40 fields on it, right? Well, we want to keep that in mind, that updating issues with issue information, that's great for reporting. That gives the management team what they need, but it doesn't always give the submitter what they need. We want to remember to add notes when we're talking about IT help desk. That lets you talk directly to that end user that's having the problem. That lets you tell them, hey, try it now. I've reset your password, try it now. Or, hey, here's the password reset tool. So next time use that instead of bugging us, right? There we go. The other thing I wanted to mention, a lot of our IT help desk folks are a little more technically oriented. They don't mind getting Active Directory integrated with their site so that everybody, it's one less password for everybody to remember. And it's just very common for us to see that. There we go. Not that it's necessary at all. So let me see if I can go to the next slide here. There we go. And we wanted to talk about inbound and outbound email. Now, what I wanted to kind of note first, the last slide was about updating issues, right? And I said it's kind of important to add notes versus editing an issue versus updating those issue fields, right? They think about all those user-defined fields and editing, the issue type so it's the right thing and adding the right asset, right? Well, editing an issue does not send an email notification, right? There's no event for that in our event engine, right? It's only adding a note that sends that email out to the other folks involved on the issue. And we want to remember that when we're looking at issues. If we're a help desk guy, if you're that end user tech, right, you want to remember that. Update the issue, really, you want to add a note, not just edit the existing information on the issue. They both have value, but you want to remember when you add a note, you're going to send that email to the end user, you're going to talk directly to them. The other part of this is incoming email. And I'll get back on my soapbox, right? You guys are probably going to be tired of hearing me talk about this by the end of the session, right? But remember, most folks, they have their password is automatically stored in their email client. They're getting email on their phone, right? They're getting email from Outlook, which stores your password for you or uses your domain credentials, right? So incoming email presents a much lower barrier to entry and much less overhead for the IT team to set up and much less overhead for the end user to submit an issue. All they have to do is know the email address. And in fact, if they say that in their address book, guess what? It's there, right? Then they can just click on the contact, send the email to. And then no further sort of stuff necessary on the end user's part. The other thing we want to keep in mind is that if we do go to where we're using incoming email, and we are adding notes, that replies to those notifications get added as a note on the existing issue. Now, incoming email is a prerequisite for that, right? Issuetrak has to be checking a mailbox to listen for those replies. I think that's kind of common sense. If you guys have questions, you need help setting up incoming email, please contact Tony or I, or contact our support team, right? It's what we do. This is part of the core features in Issuetrak. The other part I wanted to mention here from this slide about updating and getting people notified is I wanted to mention text messages. We will talk about web forms in a second too. So there's a bullet point for that. I see that, and I see there's some interest there to Q&A. The text messages, I don't know how many, this kind of gets to be a legacy feature. Some people remember this and use it religiously, and some people are like, oh, I didn't know it did that. I didn't know we could do that. So I think it's worth just taking a minute in our presentation here and walking over to some of that. So there's a couple of prerequisites for using Issuetrak to send text messages. Notice how I put that, a couple, right? And the first thing is that you've got to get the SMS message field filled out on the user's account. Excuse me. Now we're going to look at my account here since I'm sysadmin in this here. Let me see if I have, there we go. And I'm going to edit. I'm Paul H in this site. And what I'm talking about is this guy down here. So that field has to be filled in for this user to get text messages. Kind of makes sense, but it's kind of overlooked also. I get a lot of customers, hey, I could never make that text message stuff work. Then you look and this is not filled in. Well, there you go, right? Now, the way to fill this in is important also. When you look at this, I want you guys to click hints. When you guys go back and try to configure this, click hints first. It kind of guides you through the page, right? And the idea with the SMS emails, right? And it says very clearly that this is an email address you're filling in, not a regular phone number. The messages that Issuetrak actually sends come out across your SMS server. So they go out as to a regular email address. Well, it's not a regular email address. It's an email address that sends a text to your phone. And this is a service offered by most large cell phone carriers. You can find, you can ask your carrier or look in your cell phone carrier's help documentation to find this or ask them. But we've got some of the more popular ones listed right here. You can see, like for me, I'm a, what am I, a Sprint user. So for me, I would put my phone number in there and then at messaging.sprintpcs.com. So we send that out as a regular SMS address, and then Issuetrak knows that because we're sending a text or an SMS, it knows to cut it down to about 72 characters. It's a much shorter, no formatting, and you don't have a lot of control over what's included in that message. But I don't think you need a lot of control either. Those are very useful in getting people dispatched quickly. You know, this comes as a text message to your phone. Now, I told you there were multiple prerequisites, so I do need to kind of pay some lip service to the other places that need to be sort of engaged to make that happen. And that is on the email distribution lists themselves. Now, we're going to look at the default one, but as you guys know, most of you that I've worked with on email stuff, there are other email distribution lists throughout the product, right? So we could click a list all here instead, but I want to show you on the default distribution. So you see there's this little mobile column right here. And if we don't have that checked, then Issuetrak is not going to send to that user's mobile SMS email. So both conditions have to be true. We have to have the checkbox there. So I'll turn this on. Right, you guys saw how I did that. I clicked edit, and then I'll just do an update. So this little checkbox here has to be checked, right? Under the mobile column. And the user has to have the mobile SMS email address filled in. And like I said, this doesn't have to exist at the default level. This could exist on other email distribution lists instead or in addition to. Right now, today's talk is not about email, but I wanted to get into that because I get a lot of questions about it. So let's get back to the slides.
No, hey, got a question.
Sure.
While you're in your Issuetrak site, the reply and substatus rules, it's amazing. I still have a lot of customers that don't have substatuses turned on, and that's so key to unlocking a lot of the automation capability. But getting the email reply from the submitter and then being able to update the substatus, I think is huge from a help desk perspective. Can you just take 30 seconds and show people if you got it enabled on this one,
Sure.
where that is, and if they have questions, we can take it offline.
All right.
After
All right.
Thanks.
So I think it's going to be hard for me to keep it to 30 seconds because I love talking about that feature so much, right?
Well, it's such a powerful feature.
I'll do my best here. So let's look at our list of issues again. I'm going to bring up that list of 143 issues. Now, can you guys tell me which ones of these have not been worked on yet? Wait a minute, we're going, well, wait a minute, right? You guys see something there? I'm looking in this column where my mouse is, right? So the open portion of this, where it says open, That is a status in Issuetrak, and the status of an issue is either open or closed. Now that's great, right? Open or closed. Hey, it's open and there's something to do, or it's closed and we're done. However, in the real world that we're all live, work, and work issues in, right? Open and close doesn't always do it. So we need these things called substatuses, and that's that extra piece right there, this pending assignment, right? So not only are we open, but we're in research, or we're open and we're pending assignment. That's the substatus. Now that works best when it's enabled, right? And really it works best if it sets the substatus by default for you in the background using a business rule. And you can see where this issue right here, I have no idea what's going on because there's no substatus compared to the other ones, right?
And the substatus is the customer's terminology.
Right, it's done in your terminology. So to get that working properly, number one, you got to build the list of substatuses, and we help you with that, right? In an IT instance, a lot of times they want to know the difference between something that's not assigned and assigned or in process, or something that's pending an approval. But I think the substatus feature is so powerful, it kind of transcends usage, right? I think everybody should have this feature turned on and be using it. Now, substatus by itself is good, right? But then it's a pain in the neck because you have to make sure that you set the substatus on every issue that comes in. So it's better when we use business rules, especially substatus rules, to automatically set the substatus for us. And substatus rules are event-driven. And what do I mean by that? Well, take a look. We just looked at the list of email notifications, right? And the events related to that. Well, here you go. It's a very similar list, right? One of the more powerful, or the two more powerful events here are the note added by submitter and note added by anyone in submitter's organization, right? So if the submitter adds a note, we have a special substatus event for that. And that can tie to a special substatus, like submitter added note, or hey, new information. The way these actually work is you set the event first, then when substatus equals, that means that's the current substatus of the issue. So anytime the submitter adds a note, and I'll show you, I've got the one selected right down here, note added by submitter, if the substatus already is customer response pending, then we want to set customer response received. Very similar to that right here, right? If the substatus is pre-close warning, we're ready to close the issue, we haven't closed it yet, we're in warning the customer that we're going to close, or the internal user that we're going to close, and the customer adds a note, well, then we want to go to customer response received. Now that's really important for my IT help desk guys, but actually it's really important for everybody. Like I said, this kind of transcends usage. I think everybody should be using this type of functionality to just make it easier to work issues. Just so you might have a bunch of new stuff, but also you got a bunch of old stuff that you can close because the customer has added a note, just knowing that. And substatus is prevalent on the dashboard, as I just showed you guys, right? There's open issues by substatus dashboard, or in all of the other dashboards, you just see it in that substatus column, that status/substatus column.
Thanks, Paul. I didn't mean to hijack it, but
quite all right. That's what I'm really passionate about, and I have trouble limiting my time on that. Sorry, guys. So, all right. So let's go on to the next page. Oh no, I think there was one last thing, and then we had some interest about web forms. So let me. We also wanted to talk about email-driven web forms. Now, I don't have an email-driven web form ready to show you guys or anything, but there are this feature called email tokens in Issuetrak, and kind of, the web forms that Issuetrak provides, that we build for you, that you pay us to build. We use the API to code those. Now, I'm not a developer. Tony did say I've worn many hats here at Issuetrak, and he's right, but I've never worn the developer hat. I can barely spell SQL. Those of you that work with me, that have worked with me, know that's my thing. I don't do code. I don't do code. I do a problem, and then hopefully I've got Issuetrak tools to make a solution, right? So to do an API code, I couldn't do that, right? I have a whole, thankfully I have a whole development team that does that for me. Now, of course, you've got to pay us for that, right? But that's not the only way to create a form, right? We've got this feature in Issuetrak that works with incoming email called email tokens. And these tokens are codes that you put in the email. You inject them into the body of the email, and I'm going to click into the settings page for them now, and they set fields in Issuetrak. Now, it's not every field. You can't set every field with a token, but there's an awful lot of them that you can set. And to expect the customer or an end user to remember this code, it's kind of tough. So a lot of my customers use an email form that they've created and there's a lot of these available. There's a bunch of WordPress forms out there, form services out there that are available for low cost or free. There's a product called JotForms that I've had some success with over time. I've heard of Cognito Forms. That's another paid service that's got a free version of it also. And using an email form, the user fills out fields, and then we take the input from that field and put it into a token. It's very easy to do in an email form with the tools that exist in that. And I've seen it done 8, 10, 12, 20, more than 24 times. Very easy to do. So the tokens themselves look like this. And here's the one in this site, here's the one for priority. And I'll copy and paste to kind of get it apart, because I think looking at it in the list here is hard. Is a little more, because there's so many tokens there. Let me pull this window over. As you guys know, my mouse is my nose, so I've got to pull something from over there. I got to look at it here, right? And right, so you put priority colon double bracket, priority colon low double bracket, and that will change the priority of the issue that's created, or if it's adding a note to an issue, it'll change the priority of the issue to low. Now, how is an end user going to remember this? Well, they're not, right? That's the whole point, right? So that's why we like an email form that captures input, like it'll capture the low part of that and then insert into the token for us and send the email off. And there are some drawbacks to doing it that way. Today's session is not about email forms. In fact, I'm going to work on a document in the coming quarter. I think Q2. One of the documents I'm going to work on is creating a step-by-step guide for creating your own email form if you don't want to buy an API form from us. So there you go. But the nice thing about this, it puts all of the configuration in your hands so that you can go back and build the form the way you want to see it, rather than having to pay us, right, every time you want to change, or every time you want to build the form and host it for you. That allows you to go out and find the form service that you want to use. So there you go. That's email tokens and forms. And email forms, let me put it that way. We'll take a look at some Issuetrak forms later. I do feel like we'll have time to look at that later, but I'm going to save that for the end of the session. I'm going to save that for the end of our 2 hours after we get to hear from Dan. All right, so now let's get back to our slides so I can remember what the next thing that Mike has for us to talk about here. Okay, so we want to talk about managing issues in Issuetrak, right? So it's nice to think about working issues and, oh yeah, I've got the right fields and I know what's going on, and Joe had this request to reset his password, or Tony, he's locked out of Salesforce again, we got to reset his password, or he needs to see more stuff. So these are the typical things the IT help desk deals with. But let's think about this at the next level up, right? Let's think about this at the management level. How are we going to make sure that all of those issues are getting done on time? And what do we do if we don't? How do we know they're not getting done on time? Well, we use things like service level agreements and global issues to group issues together and report on them. Or like with global issues, we have a shared resource that goes down. In fact, I've got a slide about global issues that we're going to go through later, and an example. But you get a shared resource that goes down. You get 20 issues related to that resource. You can close all 20 of those in one shot using a global issue, rather than trying to go to each one of them and add a note and close and all this. Oh, why would you do that? You're going to do the work once. Don't do the work in Issuetrak more than once. And service level agreements, that's our KPIs. That lets us know how quickly we're responding to an issue and how soon we are closing that issue, and compares it to a standard. So we can say, hey, we're within our KPI 95% of the time, or 83% of the time, or maybe we're less than that. And we need to look at ways to get within our KPI. That's what service level agreements are really all about in Issuetrak. It's comparing how quickly you respond and close an issue to a preset standard. Then we've got our time features. And then really what Mike meant by that, and we talked about this some, Mike was talking about labor hours. Now, in the customer service and the complaint management arena, we don't care how long it takes to deal with that customer. We're going to take as long as it takes. We're going to retain that customer. But in the IT help desk arena, things are a little different, right? We want to have a return on our investment. We don't want to have to spend hours and hours every day resetting passwords. So we go out and create password reset tools, right? And to know how long we're spending on an issue, we really need labor hours, right? That really doesn't tell us how long the issue's been open, but it tells us how long it took us to work on that issue, right? It may have taken me a day to figure out how to use a password reset tool. So the issue that I put for needing a password reset was open for 2, right? But the amount of time that the tech took to tell me that there's a password reset tool, click on this link, that's 5 minutes, right? And it just adds a note. So that becomes important when we're talking about time on an issue, in addition to our adjusted time and total time. And we can talk about those later on too, if you want to talk more about time reporting in Issuetrak. The other thing I wanted to get into here that Mike and I felt was important about IT help desk issues was the business rules, right? We already talked about auto assignment and routing issues, getting issues to the right people, making sure they go to the owner of the system or to the right team that can fix the problem. But we've also got these escalation rules and substatus rules. Now, you guys saw the substatus rules, so I'm going to kind of skip over that too, because you already know what that is. But let's talk about escalation rules, right? Escalation rules are time-based rules. They fire off based on a time limit and some criteria. And I think most of my customers know what these are and use them or should use them. But every once in a while, we get somebody, oh, yeah, you told me about that way back when we had our jumpstart, but you haven't told, I've forgotten about it. Now I've got time to configure that. Now I want that. So I think it's worth just taking a quick look. I know what am I at 1:45? We got about 15 minutes left for my portion of this. So I don't want to take too much time, but I want to at least show you guys the criteria, right? So it all starts with the time frame, and that can be after time entered or last activity. And then we get into the conditions, right? The criteria. Is the issue type this? Is the priority that? Or is the location or organization, right? And then what happens? What happens when an issue escalates, right? What does that word mean? Well, when we escalate an issue, we can do one of these things to it, right? Or one or more of these things to it. We can change the assignment, set the priority, set the substatus. We can add a note, or we can make that note private. We can close an issue, or we can send an email, right, to an email distribution list. Now that's not listed here. That doesn't show up until after you save the rule. You have to save the rule first, then you see the email distribution list setting. So that's it. That's the basics of escalation rules. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on it. Tony, did I do the feature justice here?
Yeah, but I'm on the sales side, so you forgot the promo. We just had a feature release or a new version of Issuetrak, and it actually came about from the user conference where we polled all of the customers that were there, their pain points in Issuetrak, new features, and one of the requests was the ability to de-escalate issues.
Ah, yeah.
So when you escalate an issue through a rule, you get that red E icon. It shows up there. Well, there's no way to tell that it's been re-escalated. So we just added a feature to the product that you now have the ability to de-escalate issues. But when you upgrade your site, whether we do it for you in the cloud or you upgrade yours, that feature is turned off. So you'll have to know about it, then navigate to the system settings, enable it, and then you have the ability to de-escalate issues.
And you can see there's a big red, I'm sorry, this is blue, a big blue de-escalate button on this issue right there. That allows us to say, okay, I fixed the condition that caused this to escalate. Let's go back to a normal situation on this. And we get a pop-up, which is okay. There we go. And if we refresh our page over here, it's 1072 was the issue number on that one. Right there, there's 1072. And guess what? No more ready. There we
Thanks.
go. That's
Appreciate
perfect.
you showing them how that worked.
Quite all right, quite all right. I love that feature. That's one that's going to be really powerful for us, especially if we have runaway escalations or things that we especially if we get a lot of use out of the escalation rules. Sometimes it's just nice to say, okay, I fixed that condition. Let's get on with business. Let's get on with fixing the issue. Right? All right. Now, a couple of things we wanted to talk about. We want to talk about actually managing assets. When we talk about IT management, right? We're talking about IT help desk. We're talking about IT assets also, the person and the hardware they are using, right? And the hardware, like I said, it's expensive. That's why this gets to be kind of a big deal, right? We're thinking about PCs, printers, routers, servers, server racks, server rooms, right? So this gets to be a big outlay of cash. And really, we want to know things like return on investment. We want to know, are we getting our money's worth, or do those things break after the first year so we shouldn't buy them again? And we do that using the asset management module. We show that sort of by attaching an asset to an issue. Now, I didn't want to get into a ton of detail. I think this is ripe for a second session at some point about asset management specifically and getting to ROI specifically. But I wanted to cover that. And one of the really nice things we do in Issuetrak, we use Track PC and Track Mac. Now, Track Mac is another new feature in Issuetrak. Did we talk about that last time? I can't remember. Track Mac allows us to do to scan a Mac the same way we can currently scan a Windows machine. We get the results back into Issuetrak, and then that either updates an existing asset that we have in the system, or it creates a new asset based on that audit, that scan that runs. And I'm going to use the scan. I like showing this. I wanted to use the scan PC field just to show you, but I want you to think about this just as an alternate way of running that Track PC. It says scan PC here, but the actual executable that runs is called Track PC. So let's do this, and I'm going to download. So it's just an alternate way of getting that scan PC, and then you can see it down here. I said download, and I said run. There we go. And of course, it opened in the window in the back, so give me a second. There we go. And you can see it's the actual Track PC application running. I don't know if that's too small for you guys. You guys may need, I don't know that I'm going to be able to get the text any bigger without going to preferences. It goes and runs this in the background and then reports this information back to your Issuetrak site. Now, a Track Mac has to be run manually or can be run from a third party. We can't do scan. There's no scan Mac. Track PC, on the other hand, you see we can run it directly from the website. We can download the executable and get it, or we can put it in login scripts. We can put it in a group policy. We can force the computer to run it every few times that a user logs in. And there's a frequency switch on that. So it doesn't have to be every single time. It could be every third time a user logs in, or every fifth time, or once a month, something like that, to update that asset information and build an asset database on the computers, on the IT hardware in the system. Now, because that's not snapping right to it, I'm going to get that out of the way. I think it's probably struggling along with Zoom to kind of report back to Issuetrak. I think is why we're seeing a little lag there. And we'll go right to the results. So I'm going to go to Modules, Asset Management, and Track PC Audit. When something gets reported by Track or Scan PC, it comes in through as an audit. And it shows up here. As you see, our little guy here is still fighting with Zoom. So I'm not gonna mess with that. So they show up here, and then you apply to either to either create a new audit, a new asset, or apply it to an existing asset. And you can see how that looks. I'll show you when it's done. And I think 5GC is my computer. So you guys are probably gonna show you way too much about my computer, but it's 5CG. I always forget. Here we go. Now you can see the breadth of information. All of this was pulled in by Track PC. Serial number, service tag, system information. You guys even have my MAC address if you want it. All right, and you can see there's a startup software, running applications. For most IT teams, they really like to see this. So this is a way for them to start troubleshooting an issue before the end user has that problem, before the end user even comes into the site with an issue. Especially if we can force this to run by login script or by group policy. Now let me get off of the Track PC, Scan PC, and talk about some of the other stuff in here. Some of the other functions of asset management before we go on to the non-asset management stuff. We talk about software licensing, right? That's a big problem for a lot of IT help desks. They want to know how many people have certain pieces of software installed. Well, you saw that Track PC records what software you have running. It also records what software you have installed. And you can apply license keys against that to see how many people have a piece of software versus how many are supposed to. There are functions in Issuetrak that allow you to do that. Now, I also had a couple of little features. I don't know, we're kind of running close on time. I'll keep this kind of to a minimum. I don't know that I'm going to make it through all of the material I have prepared here, but I did want to talk really quickly. I told you guys I would talk about global issues. So I wanted to cover that really quickly before we kind of end this section. All right, so where I'm gonna go is back to, there we go, CS training. And I'm still logged in as me, but what I wanted to do for global issues, and what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you guys what happens when we've got several issues related to the same shared resource. Right? And I put a few of these in here. I did this to kind of show you what's going on. So when I put these in yesterday or 2 days ago, so they'll be at the bottom of the list. We'll get down here. And you can see right here, we got a printer not responding. Well, how many minutes later? 1 minute later, we got printer not working. Then another same minute, not even a minute later, right? What's up with printer 102? And have you guys looked at printer 102 yet, right? So you get the feeling there may be a shared resource there, a printer that's not working properly, that somebody needs to go and look at, right? That's an typical IT request, right? So let me open up the first one that came in. And normally, instead of having to add, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4 notes to tell all of these guys, yes, I'll look at printer 102, right? I want to group those together as a global issue and then update once, add that note once, so it goes out to all 4 of those users. And to do that, we use the promote to global option. That's what a global issue does for us. It allows us to group issues together. And then we do something to one issue, and that change is translated to the other issues in the global. And you can see there are settings for that. These settings really are what they mean. They really are what they say they are, right? Do we override the default settings for fields? And do we copy the tasks and the visibility settings? Right? Now, in this case, I'm just going to click promote. And I'm going to convert this normal issue, 1401. Now it's a global, and it can have other issues linked to it. And when we do that linking, now if I add a note to 1401, you can see if I add a note to 1401, it's going to translate that out, copy that note out to the linked issues. That's what that checkbox means on change. We change the global, it pushes that note out to the linked issues. But there aren't any linked issues yet, right? And Issuetrak does searches by issue type, this list by issue type. I'm just going to use this list to do my linking, but there are other modes of finding issues to link, and you can even submit new issues to link. Like if you know that something affects multiple people, you can create those issues right here as well. I'm just going to click link. And it gives me a pop-up, right? Are you okay? Would you like to continue? And now, come on, there we go. You can see they are linked. And we could unlink them if we needed to. Now, I'm going to go back to issue view here. And because of the way I laid out this custom screen, you can see here's that same list of linked issues. And if we add a note here, right here, and let's see what in all caps, right? Because we're getting really hammered on this issue, right? I gotta remember not to hit the shift key. Right? Now that's the way we feel like sometimes, but of course we never want to send that to an end user. We want to be nice to them, right? And we add that. Now, if we go and look at one of those other issues, we're on 1401. If we look at 1402, 1403, or 1404, you can see that note got added. Did I do that too quick for you guys? So I added one note, but it was copied to the linked issues. And now if we refresh this pop-up window, you can see it's very clearly marked as a global with 3 linked issues. Now, there are other ways of linking issues together, like through projects, which I've talked about at length before, and I feel like we could do a whole nother session on. We've also got some new features.
Hey, Paul, don't mean to interrupt. I want to make sure we're not stealing time from the task manager.
All right, so I wanted to let me just jump out of this really quickly. So our new features are the related issues and the hyperlink, right? And you can see that right here's our hyperlink. Like if we had an issue in another system, or if we use the related issues user-defined field, one of those, you can see related issues. And if we look at one of those related issues, this issue number will be listed.
And those were 2 more user conference suggestions from customers.
Came right in from the user conference. I believe we talked about them last time in the new features, or we talked about them in one of our webinars. All right, so I'm going to jump off right there. Well, I'm going to stop talking about IT help desk and features right there. And Tony, you think it's okay if we take about a 3-minute or a 5-minute break here for me to rest my vocal cords?
You got 3 minutes.
All right. You're a slave driver, sir. Slave driver.
That gives everybody time to refill the coffee cup.
Right. I want everybody to get a drink of water, drink a coffee, just relax. I'm going to leave my webcam up so you guys can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to mute my microphone.
All right. So it's right after 2 o'clock. So we'll start at 2:05. We'll be right back, people.